ask questions, all I would get in return is, we don't question God. And that made me question even.
I'll try to make this as short as possible, but I think something that I've identified within Christendom is the fact that whenever people come up and raise questions about certain things about Christianity, the Bible, and religion in general, I think most of the times we either don't give them the response that they're potentially looking for, or sometimes it's a thing where we're like, we don't question God as this particular person has said. But I would like to also propose that sometimes the reason why we do not get the responses for which we're looking answers is the fact that we tend to Christianity is mostly built within community. Christianity is mostly built within the fellowship of the saints, where people come together, they gather, they discuss, and whatnot. And by and large, people's ideas and, let's say, the understanding, or as the term is placed, the deconstruction of ideas within Christendom tends to be done in isolation. And you find that most of the questions that people presently do have are questions that have been held by a lot of people across time. Christianity has been there for about 2,000 years. And then when you assess people that maybe on journeys of deconstruction, and people that are on journeys on that have come to certain conclusions that have not necessarily been drawn by various people. Of course, there's like genuine truth seekers, and there's people that are genuinely on paths to understand God, to understand Christianity, and to understand religion in general. But in most cases, you'd find that people were on this journey of isolation and asking the same questions that have been asked over and over again over across a period of time. And in most cases, and of course, the way the internet is also designed, it's more like the algorithm will do a confirmatory bias of some sort, right? So you tend to find answers that you are looking for, quote unquote, and you'd find that this is not exclusive to the non-Christians. It's also exclusive to Christians, who then find content that is simply confirming the biases within the belief system. And you'd find that and then there's also non-Christians who then find content that is confirming their biases about Christianity and religion and all these kind of things, right? So you'd find that people don't necessarily actually, let's say, genuinely find the answers that they're looking for, because they're unable to, one, by virtue of the algorithm, or two, because they're also looking at certain sources of information that are not as well informed as they ought to be about certain subjects and topics. And that's why of course that's why sometimes we tend to create these channels as let me call it Christian Apologetics, and to try to create a platform where people can then ask questions and what's it called, find answers for what the answers for what they're looking for. And what I wanted to point out is that, first of all, on the Christian side, we are afraid. I don't know if we're afraid or what. I think we're afraid to be challenged in our faith. And then in most cases, when we find people that are challenging our faith, either because we don't have an answer to the questions that they're asking, we tell them that, oh no, you don't question God, or because ourselves, we also don't want to be challenged in that faith. So we then resolve to avoiding any sort of questions, a series of questions that would challenge that aspect of faith. But also, secondly, you'd find that on the non-believer side, people are not genuine truth seekers, and it could be that they only are asking certain questions to refute someone's faith, not because they want to learn from them, but because they simply want to present them as irrational and people that haven't thought through their faith. And you find that there's, if I may genuinely say, there is lots of resources on various topics, on various subjects, on various questions that have been asked across. Christianity has been there for over 1,500 years, and it's highly unlikely, it is possible, but it's highly unlikely that you have a question as a non-believer, even as a Christian, that hasn't been wrestled with, that hasn't been tangled with, that hasn't been thought through, for there to be a response that is at least, at the bare minimum, satisfactory. So, but then it then goes back to, are we genuinely seeking the truth, or are we simply deconstructing ideologies that were not even grounded in the truth? This is something to think about. And on the Christian side, are we genuinely challenging our faith? Are we genuinely responding or availing ourselves to be the answers to the questions that are being asked? And even when we have certain things that do not make sense within Christendom, do we then pursue the truth about those things, or do we just simply shove them down our throats or subconsciousness and pretend that these particular challenges to our faith do not exist. So I think these are some of the things that we can contemplate on, think about, and then maybe to a certain extent and at a certain point in time come to the genuine search. And I also usually don't like this statement that most deconstructors use when they say, when I actually started studying the Bible. I think it presents the idea that Christians in general do not actually study the Bible. And whilst that is true to a certain extent, because of course there's a couple of Christians, or there's a number of Christians that do not genuinely and in-depth study the Bible, there is a lot of Christians. And of course we're in a day and age where faith is being challenged, and of course you get to a certain stage of maturity where your faith is challenged, and I do believe that people at that stage or point in time actually begin to study the Bible and genuinely take their time to study the verses and things that do not necessarily add up within the Bible. And of course we've all have been to that journey, and maybe I'll speak for myself, but we all have possibly been through that journey, and then there's people that turn out to be like, no, I'm going to take this path out of Christianity, and other people whom this journey, like myself, has strengthened their faith. So I think one thing what I'll then say in conclusion is that don't be afraid to pursue the truth. Don't be afraid to pursue challenges to your faith. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to answer questions. I would like to propose that Christianity, within Christendom, we ask questions. Within Christendom, we challenge God. Who can I use as an example? David, the person that God proclaims to have been the one after his own heart. Do you know how many questions he asked? Do you know how much of challenges he presented to God? Do you know how much of challenges prophets in the Bible presented to God? So God has been questioned time and again. Time and again, God has been questioned. So the very idea or the concept that God can't be questioned is biblically false. So this, I say as a Christian, is biblically false. But also the very idea of us proposing that we are much more intelligent than a being that's supposedly omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, that also is I would call it a grandeur delusion on ourselves, because when we then purport to be wiser than the person that brought forth the entire universe, then we are deluding ourselves into believing that we hold a certain moral high ground that we genuinely do not hold. And if you've listened thus far, this has been a very long video, but I hope you enjoyed. And for the sake of interaction and engagement, if you have any question, I guess this is the opportunity to place it in the comment section. What questions do you have? And if I don't know the answer to, I'm not afraid to say that I do not. And that's something Christians also ought to start doing. If you don't know the answer to the question, simply say you don't, and then pursue that. Use it as an opportunity to learn from that. Kudos.